Okay, let's jump right in. Today, we're unpacking a really profound and honestly pretty challenging essay by the writer Raz titled, I Lust, Therefore I Am. We're going to explore the philosophy of sexual discipline, loyalty, and how we actually go about governing our inner selves. You know, it's a topic our culture loves to kind of oversimplify, but this explainer demands we look at it with some serious philosophical rigor. We're starting right out of the gate by challenging our modern definition of quote-unquote good behavior. Society generally tells us, as long as you don't cheat, as long as you aren't physically crossing a line somewhere, you're a disciplined person, right? But Raz asks a much sharper question. Is merely suppressing your physical actions actually enough?
So the crucial point here is that true discipline isn't just about white-knuckling your way through physical temptation. It's not about keeping up outward appearances while your internal gaze is just constantly wandering all over the place. It's really about the inward governance of our silent internal appetites. The author makes the case that a person who never physically cheats but constantly rehearses lust in their own mind, well, they're still fundamentally ruled by it, just, a bit more quietly.
Because this source material is pretty philosophically dense, here's our exact roadmap for the explainer. 1. The illusion of discipline. 2. Lust, desire, and love. 3. Philosophy of self-governance. 4. The logic of exclusivity. And 5. Practicing true inner discipline.
All right, Section 1. The illusion of discipline. Let's explore exactly why our society's intense focus on external actions completely misses the hidden internal rod.
The source basically argues that when a society leaves its appetites completely ungoverned, the inevitable result is this escalating war against the human body. People are literally mutilating themselves with extreme surgeries or fillers just to fit into this hypersexualized economy. And we see speech degrading too. Think about how rating human beings out of 10 is just considered casual conversation now. We've totally normalized treating people as consumables, like items tossed into a shopping cart, and then we act shocked when actual devotion becomes rare.
Moving right along to Section 2, Lust, Desire, and Love. Let's see how this builds our framework by precisely defining these terms.
First up, sexual desire. Now, it's absolutely crucial to clarify that biology does not make prescriptive moral claims, meaning desire itself, not the villain here. It's just a biological motivation for reproduction, bonding, and pleasure. Kind of like money, it's completely morally neutral. The problem only really kicks in when that desire becomes deformed. And that deformation is exactly what we call lust. See, unlike hunger or sleep, which have biological cap signals, right? Like your stomach stretches to literally tell your brain, hey, I'm full. Lust is this unchecked motivational state. It can just escalate indefinitely. And most dangerously, it strips away human dignity by reducing a totally complex person into a mere instrument for your own instant gratification. On the flip side of that, we have romantic love. We can really easily contrast lust's inherent selfishness with love's altruism and mutual flourishing. In this state, the other person is actually viewed as an extension of the self. You aren't just extracting value from an object. You're surrendering to a shared, reciprocal union that elevates both of you. It's a total paradigm shift. Okay, Section 3, Philosophy of Self-Governance. We're going to bring in some of the heavy hitters of philosophy here to ground this worldview, not as some sort of religious prudishness, but as a rigorous intellectual necessity. Aristotle's mechanics of moral failure show us a brilliant distinction here. He talks about the continent person, someone who restrains their actions, holding back the untamed mustang of their urges, but internally, they still really want to do the wrong thing. And honestly, that is exhausting. But the temperate person has actually re-educated their appetite. Restraint is easy, but true governance, literally rewiring what you actually want so it aligns with reason, now that is the ultimate goal.
And this brilliantly illustrates Immanuel Kant's view. Kant argues that when we surrender to unchecked animalistic lust, we're actually violating our own dignity. We literally step down from being an autonomous person in control of ourselves to becoming an object that's entirely driven by outside impulse. Lust trades our rational personhood for temporary physical sensation. Crazy, right?
Finally, we look at Isaiah Berlin. Berlin's concept really proves that having no external barriers to your desires, which he calls negative liberty, doesn't mean you're actually free. If you are entirely driven by unmanaged inner impulses, you're essentially a slave to them. Positive liberty, or true freedom, absolutely requires self-mastery.
Section 4, the logic of exclusivity. Let's apply these principles to modern relationships and look at the underlying arithmetic of devotion. The author uses a really great framework here.
While non-exclusive relationships might be entirely permissible based on mutual consent, kind of like eating a burger is permissible, ethics completely collapses into mediocrity if we don't actively strive for what is better. If the actual goal is a maximal, deeply vulnerable romantic union, we have to look at what structure supports that.
So, consider this devotion budget concept. Imagine you have exactly 100 finite units of time, energy, and erotic focus. Dividing those 100 units naturally limits the depth of any single connection. Monogamy, the author argues, isn't some archaic patriarchal rule, it's literally just the structural arithmetic required to give 100% of your devotion to maximizing a single unified partnership.
And finally, Section 5, Practicing True Inner Discipline. How do we actually step away from wandering eyes and modern hookup culture to rewire our minds?
By looking at the mechanics of neuroplasticity, the author proves that indulging in internal fantasies has real material consequences on your brain. Just like taxi drivers physically develop larger spatial memory centers by navigating cities, mental rehearsal of lust carves deep neural grooves right into your brain. If you casually objectify people, you are wiring your brain to demand constant novelty. But here's the good news: deliberate redirection can actually unwear those exact same grooves.
The source outlines these 5 actionable steps to rewire the mind. Reform what you crave. Regulate your attention, no double takes. Discipline your imagination so your mind isn't just a private theater of lust. Discipline your speech, literally stop casually rating people's bodies. And curate your environment by getting rid of thirst traps. The author stresses this isn't thought policing. It's vital, voluntary self-mastery.
Now, as you undertake this rewiring, you will probably fail sometimes. And that's okay. We have to remember the myth of Sisyphus, reaching a peak of clarity, slipping, and watching the stone roll back down. Slipping up is just a natural part of the human condition. The true purpose of discipline is the act of returning and choosing to push that stone back up toward the good again.
What you practice in private becomes what you are in public. This powerful quote from the text perfectly encapsulates everything we've unpacked in this explainer. You do not just drift into virtue by accident. Inner discipline, what you cultivate in the absolute quiet of your own mind, is the absolute prerequisite for a stable, devoted, and truly fulfilling love in the real world. So we leave you with this final, provocative thought to evaluate your own internal metrics. Will you remain quietly ruled by your appetites, or will you do the hard work of truly owning your desires? Because the person who truly owns their desire owns their life. Think about what your own internal devotion budget looks like today.